This video will talk about the changes to the inventory program that were put in when the inventory program was allowed to stretch. I'm not going to demonstrate the stretching function here because you can see that in the previous video. As you can see, the two opening screens look pretty similar. But first I want to start off by showing the differences in the actual screens where you would be making the changes. As you can see here, the screen to deal with the car description are very similar, except that the one on the left, the older screen, has tabs, and the one on the right, the newer screen, uses buttons. There's not a one-to-one correspondence between tabs and buttons because two of the tabs have been moved to the utilities function, and I will show that later. Also, the reset button is now on the button list, and every screen ends with an update or a reset. There is one new function here, and that is the fuel. We can now allow you to enter the fuel used by the vehicle. So if you have a diesel vehicle rather than a gas vehicle, you would just simply select that. That's not going to be moved to the older version. The cost screens are, for all practical purposes, identical. The bought from screens are also identical, and the print forms screen are identical. The next tab button now does a circulation through the various functions, whereas the old system required you to select the tabs, or in some cases to select a tab button. The other major change from these screens is that in the old system you had to enter the description, the cost, and the purchased from before you could save the data. In this new system, anytime you enter anything on any one screen, that one screen data will be saved, so you can come back at a later time and enter the cost or the bought from information without having to do it in one session. More importantly, if the program blows up in the middle of that, you don't lose all your data that you've entered. After you have changed any data in any one screen, let's say we want to put in a second color, you can save the data by either clicking on any one of these buttons that takes you to the next screen or clicking the update button. If you click, for instance, the cost, we can now play with the cost data. If we go back to description, you can see that our second color is there. Likewise, if I want to exit from the program and I want to keep the data, I can click the Exit X, or if I want to erase what changes I've made during this session, I can hit the Reset X. So let's talk about the differences in the home screen. Again, most of the same stuff is there. There is an obvious difference in the utility functions in that there's more of them. The old utility functions simply had add or modify a vendor or search function. The find stock number was a separate button. Now all those buttons, the find stock number, the search by, the vendor, and now the about are all sitting in the utility functions. So the About button shows you a screen that looks pretty close to what the About tab did on the old system. The search screens look about the same, even with the blue background. The find stock number by car description or car make look the same, except for some reason the car description is lilac instead of blue. I'm going to have to figure out why that is. The other thing that you can notice that's different is the last selection and the highest stock number are rearranged a little bit, and the last selection is in this box along with this button. The last selection is now remembered from session to session. That is to say, if we stop the program and then restart it, you will see that it remembers the previous selection. If we click the redo button, it brings us to that selection. That function will also not be put into the old version of the software. The other thing that the front page will show is if we go to a stock number where we haven't completely entered all the data. So in this case, the cost data has not been entered and the bought from data has not been entered. That's why we've got those things in red. When we exit from this screen, we will show here that the previous selection, that is 7034, is missing the cost data and the purchased from data. If we then go and put some of that data in, and I can get there by the redo, I'm going to go to the cost. I'm going to put in $6,500 for this and $3,500 for the cost. Update that. You can see that this flag now goes away. That also is not going to be put into the older version. For a while, I will support both the old and the new inventory programs. The splash screen will be modified to let you select which one you want to use. Eventually, the old one will go away. Over time, I will also be making this modification of stretching the screen in the deal program, the admin program, and probably the self-finance program. As I said in the previous video, the inventory search program and the quick quote program already have this capability because they don't have tabs. The next video in this series should be the inventory display program. At the moment that isn't done, but that should be done pretty quick.